So very late last night, Sony announced two new mid-range smartphones, the Xperia XA2 and the larger Xperia XA2 Ultra. There's a lot of really interesting things going on here, not least of which is the fact that they both have fingerprint sensors, and we're actually going to get those in the United States. That's a first for Sony, and I'm really looking forward to taking it for a spin, but there is a lot going on here that you're going to appreciate as well. The XA2 has a 5.2-inch display running at 1080p, which is a notable increase over the 720p display we got in the XA1, and it does actually look really quite nice to look at. There's a bit of curved glass along the top, and it blends really nicely into the slightly curved updated Xperia aesthetic, which I've always been a really big fan of. Sony also says the bezels along the top and the bottom of the display are a little bit smaller, and I think that's true. They're a little bit smaller. They're definitely more noticeable than you'll see on some other smartphones, especially as we're transitioning into very common 18:9 aspect ratios, but it's still really nice to kind of look at, and I really enjoy holding this thing. That's one thing Sony has always done very well, is building a device that feels remarkably sturdy and sort of comfortable to use in your hand. Inside we have a Snapdragon 630 chipset paired with 3 GB of RAM. That's a move away from the MediaTek processor that we got in the XA1. So again, nice little boost in performance there. I've been playing with it for a little bit now and everything seems remarkably buttery. This isn't the most powerful chipset out there, but if you're not looking to play a ton of games or not really looking to multitask a ton, I think you're gonna get quite a bit of use out of this thing. But as with the XA1 and the XA1 Ultra, it's really all about the cameras. We've taken a couple sample photos so far and they're actually pretty impressive. It's kind of a dark room here. The lighting isn't exactly great, but we have been pretty impressed with what we've seen so far. Right on the back here is a 23 megapixel sensor, which we have seen in the past. It's very similar to the one that we got in the Xperia Z5, but it has been boosted to shoot at up to ISO 12800. So if you're shooting in the dark, you're gonna be able to get a lot more clarity and maybe not worry about the grain and sort of the dinginess that tends to pervade really low light smartphone camera photos. Up front is something a little more peculiar. It's an 8 megapixel wide angle camera that you can shoot in 2 modes if you're trying to get selfies of yourself or capture a group. So the 80-degree field of view, which is on by default, is what you're going to use when you want to line up your shot and get that face looking nice and good. But if you want to get all of your friends and family in there, a quick tap of the button gets you into the 120-degree wide angle view, so you're able to squeeze everyone in really nice and tight. Obviously, the XA2 is not done yet, but we'll get you some more informed details once we get to play with actual final hardware. Turning now to the XA2 Ultra, it takes a lot of what made the XA2 sort of special and built it into a bigger body. So we have a 6-inch 1080p screen here. It's a bit cumbersome to hold, but that's sort of unavoidable. I will say, however, that Sony's propensity to build really dense, comfortable, sturdy feeling phones makes this maybe not the smallest phone you'll ever hold, but definitely one of the most reassuring, which I think actually counts for a lot. Around the back, we have the same 23 megapixel camera and the fingerprint sensor, which yes, is finally coming to America, but around the front, we don't just have that 8 megapixel wide angle camera, we also have a 16 megapixel sensor with optical image stabilization. So if you're like my colleague Sherlyn back there taking selfies 24/7, you're gonna get the crispest possible quality. And I think she's, oh God, don't, just, hey. As you'd expect from a bigger phone, it does have a bigger battery, specifically a 3500 milliamp hour battery cell. That's up from the 3300 milliamp hour battery we're getting in the XA2. What remains to be seen is what that difference in battery actually means for the bigger device, because it's driving that bigger display. The 630 isn't the most power-hungry chipset out there, but we're looking forward to seeing how all of these pieces fit together when these devices officially launch in February. All told, these are mid-range devices, and it's easy to sort of write them off as maybe not the most interesting, but what I've always thought was really cool about the XA line is Sony has decided, hey, there are certain features that mostly wind up in flagship phones that actually everyone should be able to access. And with devices like the XA2 and XA2 Ultra, we're finally seeing some of those really impressive things trickle down to a more affordable price point. We're gonna play with these things a bit more and actually a lot more here at CES 2018, so stay tuned.